G'day, ladies and gentlemen. How are we today? Freedom lovers, freedom fighters, all the wonderful titles we like to give ourselves to, I don't know, define us, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. Sips, ladies and gentlemen. Sunday Arvo drink. Nothing quite like it, is there? Look, we're going to be in and out as quickly as we possibly can today. I did have a different plan, but it didn't quite work out. But that's okay. I had a chat to our special guest who shall return, and we decided we're going to do a little bit more research and present this idea a little bit more in depth. But don't worry, a bunch of stuff has been sent to me anyway, so we will get to that shortly. Quick reminder. Actually, let's bring in the video, shall we? I'm sure he'll appreciate it. Before we get into that, yeah, Zach's push-up challenge.
It won't be perfect. Don't worry.
Best you can, as many as you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Good effort, son. Good. So he's been busting ass all week. I was going to get him doing live ones, like, maybe every 20 minutes we just quickly cut to Zach doing more push-ups. But apparently Sunday's the day of rest. So who would have thought? I guess that might go against some people's view on religion, but that's fine. We're going to talk a little bit more about religion and on your views on it in time to come, though. So I just thought we'd point that out, and a thank you to everybody who has chucked a couple of bucks in. Zach has made his goal. He's $10 over his goal. So anything from this point on is just a bonus, if you like. Just $5, $2, $3, 50 cents, whatever. It's for mental health. It's all there. I'm going to punch it into the comment section once more. If you want a copy of that, it's also on the Telegram page. So I believe I put it there. Better check, make sure I did. I think I did. I did. Yes, it is there on there, along with all the wonderful things that we talked about on Friday, including Dr. Beverly and Dr. Valerie Pier's GoFundMe pages as well, if you like to get support behind the good doctors who could actually make some big change here, with what they're doing. Obviously, the give, send, go here, Dr. Valerie, and Dr. Beverly's stuff, they still haven't quite reached their goals, which is a bit disappointing. But, they definitely need some support there, particularly by the look of it, Dr. Valerie more than Dr. Beverly. For some reason, people have gotten behind Beverly's before Valerie's. But, they're punching above their weight in a sense economically, but I think what these guys are ladies are putting forth might just be the ultimate remedy to ensure that the government doesn't do what they did 5 years ago ever again. It should make life a lot harder for them. Not to say they won't try, but it should make life a lot harder. Obviously, also we talked about last week FUCCP, and a bit more on Friday. We dived into exactly what everything is regarding the Solemn League and Covenant of the People of Commonwealth of Australia. Definitely want to check that podcast out on Friday if you haven't seen it already. There's a lot in there, particularly the first part where we unpack it. Obviously this is the Facebook event. Should you wish to join Jody Lowe on his desire to run his Cairns to Canberra parade, if you want to pick up anywhere along that Queensland, New South Wales coast on the way down to Canberra, I have to confess I won't be able to make the first part of it. I'll see what I can do to catch up at some point, which also leads me to letting you know that next week there will be no podcast. Had in plans for quite some time to go out on country with some very good friends of ours, and it's a big family event. It's the first big family camping trip for my little family, and to take them out on country with my Indigenous brothers and sisters will be a very exciting and plentiful, I guess, of knowledge and sharing of cultures weekend that it's been waiting to do for quite some time. So I just really can't go ahead and change that. It's just a bit hard, and it's a celebration of the solstice and all those sorts of things, even though we're going to be a little bit late because the solstice is either today or tomorrow. I should check that actually. When is it the actual solstice? It's 2025 winter Australia. Couldn't just give me a straightforward answer. Maybe because I misspelled it. I don't know. Don't search only for my misspelling. So June 1, the 21st. Oh, it was yesterday. There you go. Well, we were already in the solstice. We're halfway through the solstice, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. So the winter solstice is June the 21st. That was yesterday. There we go. So thank you. Awesome. We got that sorted. All right, moving along. So yeah, we did the Solemn League and Covenant stuff. The links for these are on the Telegram page. I can email if you need to. So we want to talk a bit about the rate rise crap that's going on at the moment. Obviously, a lot of councils, the council pandemic of raping and robbing from the people so that they can give to themselves, is in full blown effect. One of the things they're using is the land valuations. And for those of us in Queensland, you can find how to object to the land valuations through the information provided by Constitution Watch. So, go to constitutionwatch.com.au. Should have a thingy bob set up for that, but apparently, yep, there it is. So, constitutionwatch.com.au to find that. It's really simple. It's actually pretty much straight at the top when you go to the page. There is a discount if you want to go to the Living Free Festival as well. There's a bit more on the Solemn League and Covenant. If you can't get to Telegram to get it, you can get it from this webpage as well. Taxing if you, and all the rest. But what we want here is objection to land valuations. I haven't had a chance to dive into it deeply myself just yet, but I will be going through this to try and figure out a little bit more, because it is somewhat relevant to me, as our council seems to want to bend us over and give us a good serving. We're supposed to continuously pay for their horrific inadequacies. So you've got two documents here. One is the Landowner's Guide, and you can download that from the site by clicking this little button here, and again, same thing here with another Landowner's Guide for statutory land valuation objections. So how you go about it and what you can do. So just a quick little one there, just to, if you're in the same boat as I am and had enough, because let's have a look more through 2024-25 council budgets handed down. And of course, we've got some pretty high ones. Townsville with a 5.1% average rate utility rise. It's pretty high. That's pretty high. Of course, they're trying to, the Townsville Bulletin, of course, of, down on their knees and given their chosen evil ones, the good old on the knees treatment. Moreton Bay 4.9%, Ipswich 5.4%, Logan 4.6%, Redlands 5.5%. So Townsville's way up, is well and truly up there with a 5.1. It's rather significant compared to some of the other councils around town. So thanks heaps for that shafting, Townsville government. Council, perhaps you could just do your jobs properly and manage your money better. But nah, fuck that. When you can just dive in to a bank account and just say, hey, look, I know my account's a bit empty. You guys fill it, assholes. Okay. This is their explainer, and it says Townsville City Council to drop its rates to dollar charge. So it's trying to make it sound good because they're on their knees giving them the treatment. Yes, ma'am. And they're obviously willing to prop up this alleged hairdresser, who's apparently the acting, emphasis on acting, mayor,
who's, oh, we'll reduce its rate to dollar change as a part of a move to soften cost of living strains. No, you're not softening it. You're a part of the fucking problem, you fucking mole. Anyway, sorry, better wash my mouth out again. Naughty me. I just see this face and, Tourette's syndrome just kicks straight in. So by reduce SIG or reducing, I don't know. I'm not a Townsville Bulletin journalist. I'm not aware of this word, REDUCIG. Stunning. Not only is the writer incompetent, but it would seem the editing staff equally so. By reducing the RID charge, Townsville City Council are hoping, so there's a hell of a lot of hope in that turd burger they're serving us here, to soften the rates shock residents are about to get when new land values are applied to rates in June 30. On average, Townsville land is expected to go up 27% in value when the new figures come into play. Acting. Yep, she's an actor, all right. Acting like she gives a shit about the people in Townsville, acting like she cares, acting like she's a decent person, perhaps. Oh, I'm not sure, maybe inside this rather bloated figure, there might actually be a decent person in there trying to desperately get out. Maybe that smile's genuine, or maybe it's just her being very proud of the fact that she's managed to seize power in the manner that she has. Who knows? I'm thankfully not inside that mind. It's a rather disturbing concept. Has committed to lowering the RID charge by 18% to help ease the cost of living. Archie's such a wonderful piece of shit. Oops, I did it again. See, it's Tourette syndrome when you see Anne-Marie Green. I'll wash my mouth out. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, look, it's a wonderfully bloated thing, and they attempt to tell you how it works, but let's face it, it's just garbage journalism. At the end of the day, they're hitting us hard. Some North Queensland homeowners are facing 20% rate rises. Let's get to the brass tacks of it as regional councils increase rates in line with skyrocketing land valuations because everybody's desperate to get out of the city. So this is the regional places are going, thank God those cities were such totalitarian wastelands, because now everybody's desperate to escape those shitholes, and now they're coming up here and to various other rural places, not to mention elbow bloody importing people like they're going out of fashion has also driven the cost of these things up, and they're all cashing in. So you can see the benefit of why they don't care, about how many people they flood into our countries, because they are more than happy to reap the rewards of that at your expense. They don't care about you. They never have, actually, Michael Jackson wrote a song about that, didn't he? I know I mentioned that, the fella a bit, but all I got to say is they don't really care about us. And actually, another friend of mine actually pointed me out, there's a metal cover by a band called Saliva. It's wonderful. I know. I'm sure many of you are inspired by the name of the band. But they actually did a really good cover of it. I thought it was really good. Anyway, just seemed appropriate. These are the things that have happened this week. So the troubled Townsville City Council capped owner-occupied rate increases at 20% in its 25-26 budget delivery. So, they're seeing a cash cow, and they are keen as to milk it by any means necessary. By force, I would say. It could be considered rape. But anyway, that's just a point of view, really, isn't it? Everything's a point of view. Isn't that right, Obi-Wan? Where is it? Thought it was going to be a quick transition, but I got it wrong.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
And I'm delivering my point of view, and my point of view is I'm feeling that it's been non-consensual sex performed upon me by the Townsville City Council. Townsville City Council collects rates. I mean, they're one step away from gunpoint fundamentally, but anyway, from 48,000 owner-occupiers, and 2,400 of the households will pay the maximum 20%. So that's interesting. 2,400 are paying the maximum. So, and again, that's supposed to make us feel good. So it's turning poor people against those, the haves and the have-nots sort of thing, but I can't imagine anybody's got much of anything. So as I looked at it, it seems that, those who are living on places like Castle Hill and the more la-di-da sort of places will be getting stung hard. They're also gunning for businesses pretty hard, from what I understand. In some cases, a 50% increase. They're gunning for much like what's happening down south under Dictator Dam, which shows you the filthy labor influences here in the disgusting excuse for a council you have here in Townsville, where they're going for the operators of bed and breakfast facilities and such as well. So it's all pretty bad. Everybody bend over, because she's coming in with the big strap on. All right, a new rate. So, I mean, it's no point really even looking at the Townsville Bulletin. It's just such shoddy reporting, and they're attempting to make it sound better than it is. Introduces rates structure for short-term accommodation, and that's what we're talking about here, is where they're gunning for, people who are coming in as holiday makers. Now, here's the kicker, right? And this is where I'm going to put my point of view of what I would consider logic forth. So Townsville struggles to get the kind of tourist business that most of the other region gets. There's a lot of good reasons for that. One is that our council sucks, but in order to combat that, they spend millions and millions of dollars on TEL, which is also known as Townsville Enterprise. And the purpose of this organization, other than to fleece a shitload of money from us, which I believe is its main intention, is fundamentally to increase tourism. So while we're funneling money out of my and everybody else's pockets here in Townsville into a bullshit organization that really does fuck all, let's face it. Oops, sorry, Tourette's again. And then they're going to attack the people, bed and breakfasts and things like that, Airbnbs and such, like the Oaks on Palmer Street or the Quest in North Ward will be moved to the new structure. They're going to hammer them, and that's going to do what for tourism? That's going to make it more expensive for people to come to a town that they're generally not going for anyway. Well done. Apparently they're going to reinvest it though. Yeah, right. Yeah, into their own pockets. It'll be just a few months before that all the hobnobs get a bloody increase in wages again. Actually, that's one I forgot to look up. There was another article where Townsville City Council workers revolt. They should be, or something to that effect. So, yeah, workers feel there is a lot of waste. No shit. I've been saying this for ages, Of course, the shoddy reporters at the Townsville Bulletin, behind the eight ball as usual, have completely decided to. They've obviously been watching my network. They're getting story ideas from here, because I've been talking about this for ages. Ratepayers may soon see bins not being picked up, parks and public land not being mowed, and other impacts of Townsville City's Council frontline service staff voted to begin strike action on Tuesday. So they're striking. They've had enough too. Even the workers at the Townsville City Council hate the fucking council. Like, how much more useless do you have to be as an administrative body, whether you're part of the alleged elected element where they're supposed to provide representation, but they don't even answer email. So how could they possibly do that? Or the hobnobs at the top, like the CEO and all the other bureaucratic nightmares that are taking a shitload of money, wow. And it's interesting. The unions are getting involved because the labor has a huge hook in there, and then the unions, it's like, is there something going on in the labor unions camp here? So they're underpaid, undervalued, and indispensable. Well, we're about to find out. So what we're hearing from our members is that there's a lot of money being spent at the upper echelons of council. Is anybody shocked? Oh, personally, I was just taken aback. I couldn't believe it. But not enough being spent on the people who actually deliver the services. At the moment in Townsville, we have a situation where we are still paying a mayor $200,000 a year to not come to work. He wants to go to work. It's because of this cow and the minion and her little minions that have prevented that. That's ridiculous. Like, and at the end of the day, he hasn't been found guilty. If you want to jump up and down about that, why don't you go hit Chris Fully up and say, mate, what's delaying this process? Why is it taking so long to conduct an investigation? It's cut and dry. It's really not that simple. It's just let's push him aside for the time being. That's what they're really trying to achieve there. That's interesting. No, sorry, I just seen a battery light come up. There's no battery in there, so why is the battery light on? Anyway, Council spent 79% more on executive remuneration in 2024. And this is the big thing. You know, they are funneling a hell of a lot of money into their higher ups who are doing nothing. You know, these guys, this cow in particular, is really good at facilitating shitloads of money. Like, they even got a more useless CEO than the one we had before come in and paid him more to be more useless. Well done. Her and the rest of her minions. They're absolutely useless. Mr. Wilson said right now, Townsville City Council workers are the lowest paid in North Queensland. I bet you the upper lot ain't. My God, their CEO is getting paid more than the Prime Minister. Jesus, down in air, they are paid 14% more. Wow, they're actually paid more in air. Wow. In Hinchinbrook Shire, they are paid 11% more. So, yeah, even the workers can't stand these bloody knobs in the council. They're absolutely useless. Couldn't bloody organise a piss on in a brewery. So, anyway, let's keep moving because we're going to do this fast today. All right. Where are we? So anyway, let's move on to the more. Hang on, I already did that. I'm now going to do it again. Anyway, let's pull that back for a minute while I sort that out. We've got good old Alpu. You know, here's one I actually picked up earlier. Let's add
changes in society. We live in a much more fragmented society than we used to. And it used to be the case that people watched the ABC or Channel 7 or Channel 9 or Channel 10 news, and in more recent times SBS as well. So there was a common set of facts, and they picked up the paper in the morning, a common paper, there was some commonality there, and that was how...
common, yeah. you try to appeal to the common folk, and you know what the rest of us are just extremists or something if we don't pick up that commonly read piece of useless journalism. Well, we just went through it, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay. We looked at the common literature where they couldn't even spell words properly. It was quite astounding, wouldn't you agree?
They got their information. So therefore, there was less diversity and less noise and genuine information.
Hang on, what about all this diversity, inclusion, and all this other crap? There was less diversity and it was a better world, says Anthony Albanese, with less diversity while catering to diversity. It just shows you what a walking contradiction this moron and the majority of the leftists are.
Information, a mix of both, but also less misinformation out there.
Oh, misinformation. Couldn't help but get that word in again, could he? Had to get that in there. So basically, how dare you use social media? How dare you think for yourself? How dare you get out there and communicate? You know, you should just read the commonly played facts and do as you're told, you know? Do as you're told. Mr. He must have been in South Sydney at the time. He's changed his sporting attire again. Interesting. Well, speaking of disgusting laws and whatnot, let's have a look at this one.
Today, because it's Friday, and that's why I like being on a Friday, because governments drop bad news. Guess what? They've told farmers who deny access to their land to energy transmission lines, which they want to plough through farms all over Victoria, will now face fines of over $12,000, and if they refuse to give their name, will be fined $4,000 if they refuse access. I mean, this is a huge issue, James, and this is going to end very badly.
It's shocking, and they're doing this not just to regional Victoria, but also in the city. In short, for people not from Victoria, the government is taking over planning controls, and as you rightly said, they're now saying to farmers, we're going to come along with a massive stick if you say no. And in the city, they're going to impose big new taxes in the areas that they want to build. I mean, what the government's doing is draconian. I mean, they are taking away people's rights. They're fining you if you don't like it and if you speak out. And by the way, if you speak out, they're not going to listen to you. The only way we can stop this stuff is to change the government. And in 18 months,
Well, you guys did such a great job of selling yourselves that clearly wasn't going to happen. You know, the fact that the Labor government's maintained power in Victoria for as long as it has, absolutely astounding. They treat the people like utter dirt. I don't know how I keep getting away with it. But what do you say here? I really wanted to focus on this.
they're fining you if you don't like it and if you speak out. And by the way, if you speak out, they're not going to listen to you.
Wow. And what's different between the alternative? Like, when does government actually listen? This is ridiculous. I'm absolutely astounded that it's even got to this point. But anyway.
What happened with John Prosciutto and Moira Deeming in the end, it's over now, and he's going to get the money as a loan. He's going to pay it off. One thing I want to play and get your reaction to, though, I don't know Deputy Premier Ben Carroll. I thought that he was a reasonable sort of bloke when you compare him to some of those other front benches from the Victorian government.
Anyway, I think what they said at the beginning is the really important thing. They just kind of rabbit on here about things that aren't really all that important to us. But while we're on the concept of shitty government in Australia, here's another one that come across. And I'd just like to thank Tracy for sending a lot of this stuff, because she's the main reason we've got a show today.
Top government advisors could soon be behind bars after they refused to appear before an inquiry into the Dural caravan plot. Tonight that decision is in the hands of Parliament, but a conflict of interest is looming.
A staffer no-show pushing Parliament into uncharted waters.
For any witness, not a member of Parliament, to decline to appear before a committee, having been properly summoned to do so, is an extremely serious matter.
5 senior government officials, including Chris Minns' Chief of Staff, refusing to attend an upper house hearing into the Dural caravan hoax, now potentially facing arrest.
It's not a matter that this committee has taken lightly.
The warrants are being sought under laws that date back to 1901 but have never been used. If approved, the advisors could, in theory, be held indefinitely.
We will have a committee.
Now, did you notice that on the back wall there? Let's go back very subtly. Right here on the top right-hand corner, just underneath the beautiful North Queensland Freedom Network logo, is a shit stain on this country. Australian Fabians. You know, apparently they aim to promote greater equality of power, wealth, and opportunity for themselves, I would assume. You know, because at the end of the day, Fabians are socialists. It's the Fabian Socialist Society, in case you weren't aware. Just thought I'd not like to point that out.
The advisors could, in theory, be held indefinitely.
We will have a committee hearing as soon as possible so that they can then be released again.
The committee was established to look at the hoax Dural caravan plot and whether subsequent hate speech laws passed Parliament based on incomplete information. Government staffers involved in high-level meetings have argued the summonses are unlawful. While their freedom was on the line, the Premier was at a business event in Cronulla this morning.
Premier, why are you refusing for your staff to appear before the caravan?
We've just held a pig fair. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Have a great day.
Police Minister Yasmin
That's it. Won't even listen to the media. Gotta love them.
Catley at a seafarer's high tea right next door to the committee hearing.
The Premier is basically telling the committee, the Legislative Council, the Parliament and the general public that he and his staff are above the law.
The final decision to seek a Supreme Court arrest warrant was taken to Legislative Council President Ben Franklin this afternoon.
He's non-committal, and which would be expected.
A move he'll consider over the weekend. Ben Franklin is close friends with Chris Minns. In fact, he's the godfather of his son. But if he chooses to reject the committee's calls to lock up these staffers, he could face a vote of no confidence and lose his plum position.
Oh, look, that's always a possibility.
Talk about a rock and a hard place. James Wilson, 9 News.
Wow. Interesting. One more for the Australian audience.
The South Australian Police are set to scrap spelling and numeracy tests as part of the criteria for the Police Academy. The Police Minister, Stephen Mullen.
Now, I'm not saying this is something that's been said to me, is that the standard copper isn't generally the most intelligent person to start with. That's why they become cops. That was a statement that was said to me. I think it might have even been by an ex-police officer at the time. So I'm not going to point figures or anything, but just an idea out there. But they want to lower the idea, and I think Alex Andy actually made a really good one. He says it before I got a chance to, so I'll let him say it.
Milligan has said the change has been made, and I quote, in order to not knock back as many particularly young applicants. Now, here's a crazy thought, Alex, and I want you to hear me out on it. If you can't pass basic tests like spelling and math, maybe they shouldn't be applicants.
Or even more so, because it says literacy. So shouldn't they be able to read the language? Now, if you're going to be an administrator of law in this instance, shouldn't you have the capacity to read what the fucking laws is? Oh, shit. Ah, God. Tourette's.
Yeah, well, look, the first thing I'd say about this is this actually really shows the crisis that we've got in amongst policing. Amongst other departments we might have, we've got a ramping crisis here in South Australia at our hospitals, and this is just another one that this Labor government is struggling with and having problems with. And I mean, look, every time I talk to one of our hardworking police officers here, they tell me that, for example, they didn't want to be out asking people whether they're still at home during COVID and knocking on doors, telling people to put on masks and so forth. They were sick of doing those sorts of things. The police joined the police force to catch crims.
Exactly. Not to be the goon squad for a corrupt, communist, Fabian socialist government.
And so there's a serious amount of disquiet in amongst SA police ranks. You're absolutely right. The answer to this, if there is a crisis in numbers, is not to just lower the bar to a point where you've turned the police academy at Largs here into the police academy starring Tackleberry and Mahoney from the 1980s. That is not the answer here. And this Labor government is papering over this, which is a very...
And I love the fact that he used the Police Academy movies. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, oh, well, why can't the average Joe sort of be a copper? But that was a comedy movie, and I think it certainly demonstrated some interesting concepts. That's for sure. I mean, again, you know, I think it was Police Academy 3 where they handball the Chinese guy around, you know, and he's there with a translation book signing up for the police force. Given the amount of imports we've got at the moment, and no doubt the low standard for bringing them in, you have to wonder how many of the new police force under this kind of law will be sitting there with a translation book trying to figure out how to say you're under arrest.
Very serious problem. Law and order being one of the most important things a state government can be responsible for. I can't believe this story. I'm absolutely shocked, to be honest.
Well, Pauline, this does speak to a broader problem, though, doesn't it? To simply lowering the standard when the going gets tough. And we're seeing this right across a range of areas in our country.
We have, James, and I brought it to the attention of the Parliament on many occasions where our educational standards have dropped now for decades, actually, and where we once very high on the ladder of educational standards, we're now at the bottom. And countries, third world countries, are actually doing better than what we are.
Probably because those third world countries aren't pushing ridiculous ideologies about whether you're a boy or a girl. I mean, come on, you want to educate people. The first thing you shouldn't be doing is confusing the shit out of them about the most core basics of reality.
I've even advocated that 14, 15-year-olds are about 2 years behind their counterparts in science and maths, other countries. So, and we have teachers leaving universities that really can't read or write themselves. And instead of lowering the standards for our police academy, I hope the government is looking into the educational standards in the schooling system, wondering why we're doing this and what's happening. Is it also because these people who are joining the police force, have they come from other countries? We're allowed in here without passing stamps in English and maths themselves, and are now, haven't got the qualifications, so they've just said, oh, we'll lower the bar and we'll allow them to join the police force. It's going right back to citizenship. People come loud in the country, they can't speak English, they can't read English. We're giving everything in other languages, even voting, everything is other languages.
Well, apparently, you have to wonder. They can't read, write, speak English, but we'll give them some guns, a badge, send them out in the street. And it's happening. It's happening. I was driving through Cardwell not so long ago, and there's a guy with a turban on and standing there with a speed gun. And it's like, wow, not only am I getting robbed blind, but I'm getting robbed blind by a guy in a turban. Come on, man. We'll come down, considering what's happening abroad at the moment. Yeah.
Why would people want to learn the English? But, you know, and we've standards in our educational system. We've put ourselves in this mess and no one's prepared to address it and say, let's get it right. I think it's wrong. And I'll tell you another thing. These people, police have to write up reports. Those reports are used as evidence in courts. If they've made such spelling mistakes, their literacy is wrong, even writing up tickets, those tickets could be presented in court and be thrown out because they're not written up properly.
And another good reason to make sure you read absolutely everything, get your know your rights stuff down and fight back. I did. The last time I got there, they tucked their tail between their legs. Yes, it cost me a day and a bit of time, but it was well worth it.
I can see it disaster time and time again.
That's a really good point. Hey, before I let both of you go, just one more thing I want to ask you about the age verification technology that will be rolled out.
Yeah, not bad point, actually, Kerry. I have to say, I was astounded at how easy it was to get a heavy rigid truck license here in Queensland. Like I did one day course, sat my test, and I had a HR license. You know, the only part of there was a component of the test you had to, I think it was like 10 questions, and they were basically multiple choice. You couldn't fuck it up. Like there was actually a testing thing that goes through the 20 options out of that you might get asked in the 10. I think it was something to that effect. I can't remember exactly, but you know, at the end of the day, you just run that for a couple of days the day before, and you'll just and you only had to get 8 out of 10 of them right. You know, so it's an 80% thing. But it's true. Seriously, you get asked 10 questions. That's it.
Out in December. The comprehensive trial as part of that has been approved. So this is all for the social media ban for kids under the age of 16. Facial identity technology that's been approved for use. Pauline, do you have... Actually,
Joe, can we go back to Joanna's comment just there? Yeah, industry full of substandard written English. Look, I have to admit, and I've openly stated this for so many times on the podcast, my literacy... my capacity to read, comprehend, and speak the language is, you know, obviously better than, you know, most people. But my ability to write it, you know, as spelling goes, really sucks. You know, I've been taking German lessons, and one of the biggest problems is I can't spell the words even when they're German. But I think I'm going to probably end up coming out better on German spelling than English spelling in the end, because I'm educating myself and give a shit, as opposed to what I endured 40 years ago, where it was a shit show and I was not happy with the way it was being taught. You know, the system failed me something fierce, and it's failed many other members of my family. Not to point fingers at anyone, but you know, I'm certainly not the only one that has suffered through this. I mean, even going back a generation or two, you know, I point to quite a few people in my family who are like, fuck school, you learn more in the real world, what a waste of bloody time. And so many people that get out around about in my industry and various other things, you know, just like, we just don't want a bar of their system and the way it's done, because the way it's done, it just feels wrong, it drives you nuts, it pisses you off. The way they do it is wrong. Any wonder there's a substandard, you know, and it's not just from those we're importing, but the homegrown ones. I'm a homegrown one, and I've worked hard to try and get my literacy up. You know, I continuously read all the time to get that level of literacy up, and I've certainly observed as time goes on, it is going down, just as Pauline said, and it's bad. You know, that we have a socialist indoctrination system that has neglected its fundamentals in education.
How much faith the government will even be able to implement this ban on under 16s using social media?
No, I don't actually, James, because it could be another napkin on the right, you know, write it on the back of a napkin. We see where that happened, the problems that we had with that. You know, the facial recognition doesn't mean that everyone's got to be scanned. You know, what about privacy in the home if anyone wants to go in on it? I think that the whole thing should be left up to the parents to actually deal with it. A lot of the kids might want to go on social media for educational purposes. We're denying them that as well.
Good point, Spazza. Very good.
How many people are going to be able to do it? I just think that it's government overreach. getting involved in the home scene where it should be up to parents. We've taken so much responsibility out of the hands of parents to deal with their own kids. They're throwing their hands up in the air and thinking we have no more rights anymore over our children. The governments are controlling it. Big mistake again, James. I don't agree with it.
And it's about as Orwellian and Big Brother as you could possibly get by taking away those basic civil rights, and a complete destruction of the family unit, a complete breakdown of basic authority. I mean, these things should start at the home level. You know, if you can't, if your kids don't have respect for the parents, what have they got respect for? You know, these are basic core values, and this is why communism doesn't work.
Alex, I've got 2 boys and I wish they'd found social media later than they did, so I agree it's a problem, but is an outright ban really the answer?
Yeah, look, it's definitely not. I crossed the floor on this issue when it came to Parliament at the end of the last term, and I did so because this is, first of all, never going to work. Secondly, this is really nothing more than a digital Trojan horse for the surveillance state. What of course they won't tell you about this. It's got a nice acronym, by the way, AATT, cute. I mean, that's, you know, you can see the bureaucrats sitting around having their coffee in the morning talking about the AATT. But what it doesn't tell you is, of course, that everybody has to go through the process of recognition and ID in order to make sure that the kids aren't using the social media. So this is going to be biometrics and facial ID for everyone. And let me tell you, very shortly, you'll need one of their loathsome digital IDs in order to access the internet. The surveillance state snare trap is on us. We've been warning about it for decades. This is not the thing of conspiracy theories. This is real.
Pauline, Alex, appreciate both of you.
So I think that one summed it up quite well, ladies and gentlemen. You know, let's face it, you know, a lot of people are sort of going back to sleep at this particular juncture in time thinking, hey, look, we've won our freedoms back. Bullshit. We never had them, as far as I'm concerned. We're just continuously losing more and more and more ground. So it's really important that people get their shit together. Did I do the quite irrelevant? I think it might be. I can't remember if I did or not. Sing out if I played this already.
The day's top headlines with Sky News contributor Prue McSween and Sky News digital presenter Gabriella Power. Ladies, let's start with the Prime Minister. He is under extreme pressure to follow the UK's lead in upping defence spending after the British Prime Minister had a productive meeting with Donald Trump.
Wow. Mr. Keir Starmer, was he recently seen on TV doing? Oh, that's right, lines of cake or whatever it was, some sort of nasal enhancing chemical by the look of things.
He secured tariff exemptions and AUKUS assurances, while, as we well know, the US president snubbed our Prime Minister. Prue, I'll start with you. What can Anthony Albanese do to repair the somewhat fractured relationship we have at the moment with our biggest ally?
Well, you can't change history, can you, Rita, when you think about what he's said about Trump in the past and then the actions of not just Albanese but the foreign minister, which is just so anti-Israel and really unsupportive of one of our greatest ally. And I think this is part of Trump's deal play, you know, put him on ice, make him second guess. He's relegated to really a third tier ally now. And this is very sad for Australia, but he's a pissant, basically, in
He's a pissant.
Trump's eyes, I'd say, and quite irrelevant. So it'll be interesting to see what Anthony Albanese can do to redeem himself. He's called in the big guns, Greg Norman and Kevin Rudd. Well, that hasn't worked for him, has it? So
I like that. Let's bring in a golf star to try to appeal to his sporting lust, and we'll continuously hammer in Kevin Rudd, the dud, who couldn't organise a piss on a brewery himself. Excuse me, couldn't even hold on to his seat as Prime Minister, had to try and steal it back through a particularly savage time in the Labor Party there, showing how pathetic Australian politics was. And what do? They handball him over to America to make an ambassador? Really? An ambassador for Australia? I wouldn't make him the ambassador of my latest turd or a previous one. I mean, It's absolutely mind-boggling. And again, you know, he's got no respect. Albo's already bloody said horrible things about Trump, and so's Rudd. So why would Trump give a flying? I was about to do it again. Wash my mouth out just in case. Why would he give a rodent's rectum? We'll go with that. Why would he give a rodent's rectum? Couldn't give a rodent's rectum, I reckon.
I don't know what cards he's got left to play.
I don't know why, Gab, who would be calling in Kevin Rudd. I mean, I think that's one of the enduring mistakes of this government, to keep Kevin Rudd in that position, given his track record, some of the absolutely insane commentary he's had about the US president over the years. Greg Norman is one thing. I think Trump likes him, but I don't think he's going to be enough to change his attitude to Anthony Albanese, Gab.
No, and you just think about how embarrassing it is for Australia that we've got Anthony Albanese and then Kevin Rudd as our ambassador to the US, when he's previously called Donald Trump a village idiot. And, you know, if you look at Anthony Albanese's track record, Prue, you alluded to it as well, but he's previously trashed Trump, saying, you know, he scares the S out of me. And even throughout the election campaign, he was kind of using Donald Trump and the MAGA movement to kind of smear the coalition and kind of falsely tying them together. I mean, it really doesn't help Australia's case. And the fact that Donald Trump cancelled this meeting and didn't even tell our Prime Minister, and Anthony Albanese had to find out through Trump's social media post. I mean, how telling is that? It is a clear message that we are not a priority. And I absolutely do not blame Donald Trump for this. Prue, as you said, Anthony Albanese, Australia's been so anti-Israel. He's been weak about defence and kind of reluctant to boost defence spending. And now he's going to have to chase Donald Trump potentially to the NATO summit just to try and get this face-to-face meeting with him, try and repair relations. Not that he's tried very hard.
I've got a Beavis and Butthead moment that kind of just it really sums up Albo at this particular point.
Please come out. Please. Yeah, me too.
Yep, that's Australia desperately trying to get rid of Albo, and possibly the way Trump thinks about him too.
Hard to this point to talk about AUKUS and to talk about tariffs, but good luck to him. You know, Donald Trump is the most powerful person in the world, and he has sent a clear message, and it is so embarrassing for Australia.
Now, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has been caught giving a massive eye roll during a conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron. Let's have a look.
Well, I don't think we really need to care about that. It was more about the elbow thing. It was more of the focus there. We'll move that to save any further communication. But, well, let's bring this over to what the international community is doing while we're talking about Trump. I must say I'm a bit disappointed. So, you know, we'll go on a few posts back here, back to June 18th of June. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but is safe there. He's an easy target, but is safe there. I'm struggling, Mr. Trump. I'm struggling. We are not going to take him out. Is that why he's safe? Because you decided not to? And he even wrote the words kill. Wow. At least not for now. So, you know, I mean, if that's not a threat and a rather undiplomatic way of dealing with things, I don't know what is. And especially seeing he's been elected as the anti-war president. This is not very becoming. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I mean, wow. I'm generally disinclined to think that Donald Trump's an idiot, but when I see things like that, it's a bit hard not to think that was pretty fucking stupid. Oops, I did it again. I feel like Britney Spears at the moment, Sips. Anyway, apparently, according to some of the suggestions for context, threatening to assassinate a foreign leader violates Article 2.4 of the UN Charter and the US Executive Order 12333. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have as a combination on his luggage. It's Spaceballs and all, which prohibits political assassination. Such rhetoric fuels war and breaches international law. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. The president cannot declare or conduct acts of war without Congress. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, gives Congress sole power to declare war. The War Powers Resolution 1973 reinforces this. There's a whole bunch of things in here where it's like, wow, this is pretty full-on stuff. Highly recommend everybody go in there and have a good large read of it. I'm really not that inclined to get too deep into it at this particular point, but I just thought I'd share that out. But of course, peace through strength. Oh my God, peace is war. And you've read Orwell's 1984, right? If you haven't, honestly, go out and read it. There is a movie for those of you who I know, sadly, a few who, but there's a movie of that. Why would I read the book? Sorry, can't read the book. It's not that big. I'm not asking you to read Lord of the Rings. The boss is back. You see, these people are just like, wow, this is good. Like, come on. He's supposed to be anti-war. You have literally minutes to come to the table, Iran. National Security Council, like, it's nuts. This is nuts, So anyway, but it didn't stop there. Unconditional surrender, he says, same day. Unconditional surrender. That's it. Just bend over. I mean, he did come out in his campaign and say he was going to be the best friend of Israel, regardless of how bad a friend they are. We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Asfahan. I'm guessing that's how you say it. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safe, or planes, sorry, are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Oh my God. I hope they put the peace symbol on the side of every one of them bombs, just so everybody who got blown up by one knew for that final moment before they were detonated right on top of them and their last breath was taken, that it was all done in the name of peace. No worries, Sunny Cat. Appreciate you too. Thanks for watching and taking the time to give me lovely comments. Really appreciate that. So thank you for your attention on this matter, says Donald Trump. I'm like, oh my God. Wow. It's just mind-boggling, isn't it? Come Friday, it was a case of you were supposed to be giving it 2 weeks to think about it. In other words, prepare for war. 2 days. Apparently, I just watched The Wrath of Khan. If days were weeks instead of, hours with days for all you Wrath of Khan fans out there. I actually watched it in German too. Anyway, I thought I reached a whole new level of nerd while watching Star Trek in German yesterday. It was quite an interesting thing. That when you watch Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, at least the 4K edition that I purchased. Yeah, that's how much of a nerd I am. I watched it in German with the English subtitles, and I may have watched that movie so many times in the last 40 years that I've actually kind of memorized the English dialogue, which is why I thought it was a good way to sort of learn the German. But they even fucked up the English subtitles. Like, you think that, like, the movie is in English. All you have to do is type what you hear. How did you stuff that up? It's like they decided, hang on, let's get the guys who put translated it into English, and then we'll give it to another team of Germans to translate it from English back into. Now, I'm going to start that again. So we got a mob who's taken it from English, translated it into German, and then spoken it. Then they've given it to another team of Germans who then take the German and then retranslate it back into English. That's the way I perceive this. Not to mention there was 5 points, I think it was, where the subtitles didn't even come up. Luckily, learnt to lip read due to audio issues as a child, but as well, memorized most of the dialogue. It was pretty bad, especially when you take things where he's literally said, we got caught with our pants down, and they changed it to breeches. That's not, like, I mean, it's the same thing in a sense, but that's not the word he used. Like, how hard is it to take the English and write it down? Anyway, frustration subsided. So thanks, Trump. God knows what this will mean for all of us. Hopefully, actually, before we move on to this point, next point, maybe, just maybe, the fact that Trump and Albo are not getting along might just be the saving grace for our soldiers not getting involved in a war that has nothing to do with Australia. because clearly the American and Israeli governments, not the people, the governments have decided that this is a good idea. I'm sure they have their supporters within their communities, but I'm kind of feeling that most people generally just want to get along, especially those who have to send their own children to go and fight for yet another pointless friggin' war. In my opinion, has more to do with changing the government than it does actually, any legal repercussions. I don't think Iran had been doing anything wrong. I think it's a case of, hey, well, we've wiped out Gaza. Who's next? What else can we get away with? Much like America trumping right through, well, maybe not trumpeting Trump, but charging through the Middle East after the 9/11 fiasco. And I'm pretty sure we all know how valid the 9/11 scenario was. But they went and blew out half of the Middle East at that point, moving in and encroaching on Russian territory and places they said they wouldn't actually go. They told Russia they wouldn't do that. They did it anyway. And one of the comments I remember being made by military at the time was that, oh, wow, we've just shown that we can go through and do this and Russia will do nothing. Why stop now? Until they got to Ukraine, at which point Russia's gone, well, no, here and no further. That didn't seem to work out so well. So they're not winning there. Ukraine's completely gone. They've raped their own people and resources to the extent that they're out. While we regress away from this because it looks really bad and it's a horrible look for Europe and America and their desire to tell us all about how Ukraine was winning that war. It's a massive PR fiasco. They've completely fallen on their faces. So what do? Start a war somewhere else, hoping you don't friggin' notice. We're all supposed to be that stupid. Don't you feel so good, people? Don't you all feel so good, ladies and gentlemen, to think that these morons actually think you're that much of a moron, you wouldn't notice what they're really doing? And the fact that they've managed to get poster boy Donald Trump here to go along with it after saying, we're all about peace. We're all about peace. War is strength. War is peace. Anyway. Well, all the bits that we all love. Good old, hopefully JFK, who threw his support behind Trump, saying he's the anti-war president. That's why I'm getting behind him, because he's anti-war. Well, I'm wondering what he's saying quietly behind closed doors, or perhaps rather vocally in a soundproofed room somewhere where he can scream and curse. I don't know. Or is he just not quite what we thought either? Anyway, JFK rips into the CNN over the claims on vaccines and placebo-controlled trials. CNN is wrong, Kennedy wrote. No routine injected vaccine on the CDC schedule was licensed for children based on placebo-controlled trial. In instances where a vaccine was used as a control, it was never licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. That is not conjecture. It is a fact based on FDA's clinical trial data. So, yeah, cool. That's the thing. Mainstream media just like to spout their regurgitated facts, rather than actually go and check the facts themselves. So, yesterday, I retired 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunisation Practices in the ACIP, the CDC government external panel that wields the grave responsibilities, and I like the word grave responsibilities, of adding new vaccines to the recommended childhood schedule. Emphasis on the word grave. Over the coming days, I will use the platform to announce new members to populate ACIP. None of these individuals will be ideological anti-vaxxers. So it's nice to state that, they're not ideological anti-vaxxers, like the ideology is just a bit of a ideology in some cases. But they will be highly credentialed physicians and scientists who will make extremely consequential public health determinations by applying evidence-based decision-making with objectivity and common sense. And this is the key. I want to, some people might jump up and down because they heard ideological anti-vaxxers and feel offended because it's something that you've been called. But if you want to identify that in yourself, that's up to you. Personally, I prefer the idea of applying evidence-based decision-making and objectivity and common sense. Although the ideological anti-vaxxer can be interpreted to mean applying evidence-based decision-making with objectivity and common sense. So this is where it all comes down to the quote of the day.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
So your point of view, if you choose to be upset by the fact ideological anti-vaxxer is a badge you wear with honor, that's fine, you know. Personally, I'd rather wear the applying evidence-based decision-making and objectivity and common sense badge. That's me. Because, you know, it's the circle. I want to sit up here. I don't want to be coming down here to socialist Russia. I don't want to be coming here to socialist Germany, you know, and I certainly don't want to end up in the pits of hell. So I will also say, you know, you go. It's very straightforward. You can go through it and read. There's quite a bit in the article. It's a good read. I just want to smash through this, so we're going to keep moving. Good old The Defender. Children's Health Defense is a great place to get information, but FDA greenlights Merrick's RSV shot for newborns. Clinical trials show 11.71% rate of serious adverse events, including death. It's just death, you know. It's just death. Fascinating, isn't it? You know, and it doesn't matter what color the baby is. At the end of the day, you're killing babies. You know, if you're into that kind of thing, well, yeah, I don't know that there's a place for you in civilized humanity myself. But I guess if you enjoy killing babies, maybe a job at AstraZeneca is a wonderful place to be. You know, because it's. There we go, AstraZeneca. And what did they learn through the COVID 1984 pandemic? Well, we might not have come out as you know, popular as Pfizer or Moderna, you know, but they did manage to make a hell of a lot of money by putting forth probably one of the most deadly of all of the mRNA vaccines. It was quite an achievement, you know, to the extent that even those who were supporting vaccines didn't want this shit, you know. It was only because the Australian government purchased a shitload of it and they had to dump it somewhere. And why not dump it into your bloodstream? Where else would you put it? You know, it's not like we have bins around. Anyway, so there was an element here. More is not better. I like that. It shot as a superior. Where was it? There's a line in here. Yeah, this line here. So I mean, it helps if you read the whole thing in context, but we'll get this from here. So, however, Sully cautioned that more is not better. All right. The implications of this are that with only one dose of, I'm not even going to try and say that. That's a made-up word. Tiny preterm babies under 5 kilograms are going to be injected with a relatively much bigger dose of the monoclonal antibody, leading to massive levels of the drug in their circulation. In most other fields of medicine, the aim is to find the lowest dose of a drug that is effective, as most side effects are dose related. Isn't that interesting? So, isn't that an interesting name? Jablonowski. He's literally got the word jab in his name, Jablonowski. And again, I look at the name and I think of all those 80s movies, even the 70s ones, you know, where they had the German mad scientist in them, you know. Isn't it interesting? They were always German mad scientists. It's just a little piece of historical observation I always like to make. Pointed out that the FDA just approved Menquedifi. Another interesting, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a terrorist or a man or a woman pretending to be a man. I don't know when I look at that word. Meningococcal conjugate vaccine. Conjugate vaccine. Was it conjugal visit? Maybe. I don't know. With a serious adverse event rate of 5.19 that diminished the immune system and induced RSV infection at the rate of 270% greater than the comparator. I think I need another beer. Menvio. Like, where do they come up with this shit? And fibrillar convolutions at a rate of 426%. Fibrillae. So I'm guessing something to do with the heart. Just as a guess. Let's just clarify that one just to make sure my assumption is correct. I just assumed earlier, and I'm doing it again, and it makes an ass of us both. Of relating to fever. There you go. I got it wrong. Can't always guess your way through it. So, you know, fever convulsions at a rate, why don't you just say that? Rate of 426% greater. Wow, isn't that inspiring? Then the FDA approves influenza. Another wonderful sounding thing. Sounds like influenza. With similar rates of adverse events, if these are the standards for a successful FDA application, what does it take to fail? That was the main thing I really wanted to look at. What does it take to fail? You know, if death is a side effect of something, it's just a side effect. It really does cheapen the term side effect. Not that I thought the term side effect had much of a real meaning outside of the fact that we've conjured this up for medical purposes, so we don't actually have to deal with the fundamental scientific principle of cause and effect. You know, let's just keep it. I know it's very black and white, you know, and they want to put the rainbow in there of side effect. It's not really just an effect caused by the shit we just administered to you. It's a side effect. Rainbows, lollipops, all the wonderful things, unicorns, farting rainbows. Anyway, let's keep moving. West Virginia schools ordered to defy governor on religious exemptions. So fundamentally here, the governor has decided to write Governor Patrick Morrissey's executive order, which allows the exemptions in West Virginia. That basically the people are trying to intervene and say, no, you're just a governor. You can't say things. You're not allowed to do that, you know, which instantly conjured up my thoughts in my head of course, science fiction. Where else would I go? So fundamentally, you know, the executive order allowing religious and conscientious exemptions to the state vaccine requirements for school children. To comply with the order, parents only need to provide a written statement explaining why they object to the vaccines. And that is how it should be, fundamentally. That is called freedom. That is a call, you know, bodily autonomy, you know, the basic understanding. Hang on, no, this is a school kid and I'm not going to fucking object this poor child with you. God knows what, you know, even if God had anything to do with it, perhaps Satan knows what would be a better way of putting it, you know, just to keep, if we're going to deal with things in this, the religious vein, you know, and you know, and veins are in jeopardy here. However, on Wednesday, the State Department of Education voted unanimously to require State Superintendent of Schools Michelle Blatt to issue guidance to county school systems, instructing them to follow the state's current school vaccination law. So it's a law war here. At the end of the day, last I checked, you know, if you're one of those man of the cloth, man of the book, woman of the cloth of the book, or whichever way you want to look at it, you know, just a spiritual being having a horrific time on the hellscape that is Earth, attempting to assert some sort of dominion over your own personal wealth and well-being. Who gives a shit what these people say, as far as I'm concerned? And a stunning example of this, if you're into science fiction in any way, shape, or form, you want to check out episode 10, season 1 of Babylon 5. As my kids like to give me shit for it, they call it Baby Lion 5. It's a wonderful little way of saying, fuck you, Dad, you're too much of a nerd. But, oops, I swore again. Sorry. Wash my mouth out. Sips, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a sip, you know, you don't want to get a dry throat and won't be able to keep talking. So, believers, interesting. IMD sums it up. An alien family refuses surgery to save their dying child. I couldn't have thought of a more inaccurate way to describe that, which is the only reason I brought it up, was to say that is like such, it's not inaccurate, but it's exactly what the mainstream media would call journalism, because they've taken a rather complex and intelligent story that takes you one way and sends you the other and back again throughout the course of this 44 minutes. And they sum it up as an alien family refuses surgery to save their dying child. You're like, why the fuck would you do that? Well, as much as I hate to do it, Wikipedia gives you a little bit more. As Dr. Franklin faces the ethical dilemma, and ethical dilemma is the key focus here, when the parents of Son, a dying alien child, refuse to let him operate for religious reasons. All right. Now, I don't want to give the story away too much. If you're interested in watching it, maybe stick your fingers in your ears. But it's a really good episode, and the way it was presented, I thought was really good. You know, fundamentally, they decide, as again for religious reasons, say no. You know, his staff members, full-blown science, and this is again the science versus religion concept. You know, which is something that we can play out quite easily in the Soviet-Russian construct in some ways too, where they go to space and go, well, there's no sign of God here. That kind of communist idea of science. which needed to remove God, which I don't think is a wonderfully good idea. Personally, I'm happy to remove the word, but not the concept. I think we need another word that's more the year 2000 sort of thing. That's just me. It's the connotations, it's the history. But if long-term watchers, you know where I'm coming from. It's not that I objection it to religion or God, just the way it's been done. But anyway, fundamentally, the associate says, no, they're going to attack the beliefs. So, this doctor attacks the beliefs, and the head doctor reminds it, no, we have ethical duty towards our patients, and you have to respect their beliefs. But of course, as time goes on, he doesn't want to go along with that either, because his love of science and his view and his personal point of view the demands that he has to save his patient. So he goes ahead and does it. And you can imagine what kind of thing happens if you wish. Otherwise, go and watch the episode. I highly recommend you do, because it is one hell of a train ride. And, because it takes you down that, wow, science is right. Oh, no, religion is right. No, science is right. And by the end of it, you don't know whether you're up, down, backwards, or forth. But I think it's a really important thing to look at when we're dealing with this particular concept. But let's not just delve into science fiction. Let's actually, what does our law say? We've been talking about the Constitution a lot lately. So Section 116, Commonwealth not to legislate in respect of religion. Let me zoom that in nice and big so that all the piece of shits in the government can actually flush themselves down the toilet should they decide to move against this. The Commonwealth shall not make any law for establishing any religion. So they can't even tell you what a religion is, as I read this. This is my personal interpretation. As Darren has assured me, the way you perceive a law is just as relevant as the way somebody else may perceive it, because interpretation is important. A certain point of view, perhaps. Anyway, for imposing any religious or for imposing any religious observance. So the manner in which you observe and perform your religion is equally important. So your ability to say, I don't want you to put that shit in my children, is quite significantly of a religious view. Just remember that and you should be fine. Or for prohibiting the free exercise of any religion. Now, some of you might say, oh, but what if they demand proof? Shall not make any law for establishing any religion. So they can't make a law to tell you what it is. They can't demand proof of it, And no religious test, in case you were doubting me, shall be required as a qualification for any office or public trust under the Commonwealth. All right. Very important. Very important stuff, Of course, if you're a little bit more in depth, there is, and this is also available on my Telegram page, because it's the only way I can think to send a large PDF of this nature, where it gets into the actual full-on what does it mean, even citing gets into quite a lot anyway. This is basically the annotated constitution. So it goes into depth as to what that small phrase, there's just a paragraph here in the Constitution itself, but here under section point 462, but is still relevant to section 116, any religious observance. The Commonwealth is forbidden to make any law for establishing any religion or for imposing any religious observance. So they can't tell you not to observe it. It's just as equally as they can't tell you to observe it. A preliminary observation which should be made is that the term Commonwealth, as used in this section, does not mean the federal community, but the government of the Commonwealth acting through any of its agencies or instrumentalities. The people and states constituting the federal community could at any time interpose and amend the Constitution in order to authorize the enactment by the federal parliament and the laws now prohibited. The prohibition itself and the circumstances under which it was found a place in the Constitution next demand attention. Now it goes on, as you can see. It's quite an extensive read. Actually, let's just this just jumped out at me. The strongest argument, however, for the adoption of the earlier portion of Section 116 was found in the special form of the preamble of the Constitution Act, which recites that the people of the colonies, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, have agreed to unite in one indissoluble commonwealth. So the very basis of our law in itself, the preamble itself, emphasizes this fact, and Section 116 backs it. You know, it's just it doubles down on the construct. It's very, very important. I highly recommend you jump over and have a look at that. It's on page. So starting on page 951, if you search, you want to go straight to it because there is 1,000 pages. There's a lot to go through. So page 951 to get into section this part 462 here in pertaining to section 116 of the Australian Constitution. It's a bit of a head fuck, but you'll get your head around it in time. The more you look at this stuff, the more it makes sense. And I highly recommend you use these resources that I've managed to acquire to assist not only myself, but I'm such a greedy bastard that I am sharing knowledge with you. And I believe that is a wonderful way to leave us today. So, actually, on the note, we don't really need to do it, do we? Of course, well, should I? Shouldn't I? Quick, you want a little bit more or not? We're at 1 hour and 20. I said I was going to do an hour. I can already feel my ears burning. And I did see a 222 there. Ooh. All right. Let's thank God out of existence because it is the basis of our constitutional rights. That's an interesting point, Joanna. That's an interesting one, especially seeing the essence of God in some. See, I was reading Terry Pratchett stuff a long time ago, and there's a book called Small Gods there, which throws in the idea that the power of a god is dependent on the belief of the people. How many people you've got believing in that god? So, you know, the strength of the god in, you know, whatever realm. Let's assume there's multiple gods, and then, you know, they're playing their little game of chess with all us minions. However we want to, you know, just a figurative concept. You know, but the more people believe in that god, the stronger that god gets. You know. Fascinating concept, great friggin' book. But on that note as well, I looked at another book of the Incarnations by Piers Anthony that I've been rereading again lately, and it got to the 7th book, and it threw that same idea in. I thought, Struth, which one come up with it first? But they've actually come out about the same time, you know, in that very early to mid 80s sort of scenario. They both released books saying the same thing, and I happen to find 2 books from 2 completely different sources saying the same kind of construct, which it is the power the power of the god depends on the power of the people. Much the same, I guess, the power of the religion in that same thing. So enough people. American Gods, Neil Gaiman. That's a great suggestion, actually. I like Neil Gaiman's work. He did Small Gods. What was it called again with Terry Pratchett? I've gone blank. They did a TV series in it too. TV series is pretty good. The book's obviously better. It always is. Help me out. You're a Neil Gaiman fan, Jane. What is it? Can I Google it faster? Google it. Search for it. Fuck Google. Good Omens. Good Omens. There it is. Yeah, that's a great book. Brilliant concept. You know, I love it. And, you know, it's the typical Terry Pratchett humor. Again, for anyone who wants to, you know, step outside the ball of looking at things, this is a very wonderful and humorous thing. And of course, there's a TV series for all of you out there who don't like literacy. But yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. But I'll have a look at that one, American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I'll check that one out. He actually did one on Norse mythology too. My son, I bought a copy of that one for him with the intention of borrowing it off him at some point too. And it wasn't really that much of a selfish gift. He really did want the book too. He was a fan of Neil Gaiman's work as well. So it's all good. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, another of your songs, please, says Michael. Okay, cool. Look, give me time. I am working on stuff. It's just I kind of need to take like a month or so away from my world in order to achieve these sorts of things. Can I quickly find the old chainsaw? It's pretty brutal. And no, look, I don't think we need to. Anyway, look, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Started with graphic novels. Gee, insightful. Yeah. I did too. Comic books was the thing that got me away from I'm not reading. I'm not reading. Stuff you, school. I hated it because somebody was making me do it. And I actually got scolded by my librarian in primary school. Why aren't you borrowing books? You haven't borrowed a book in a month. There's nothing here that I like. Well, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, never, ever walk up to a librarian and tell them there's nothing here that you like. I tell you what, I've never seen a woman lose her shit quite like it. That was impressive. Actually, I've seen worse, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, for what was I, 7, maybe, probably about 7 years old at the time, somewhere 6 or 7. Yeah, I thought she was going to bite my head off, literally, rip my head off and roll it down the hallway. She was not a happy camper. But yeah, in the end, I found things that I liked. I just had to get away from school to do it. That was the big one. I do have a copy of The Art of War. I've read the first part of it. I haven't got through to all of it yet. I kind of have about 10 to 15 books scattered through the house that I pick through at times, and some things favor another more than another. Actually, The Art of War has been in a process of being read for about 2 years. Don't ask me why. That's just the way my mind works. Sometimes I'm onto something and I smash it out in a week. Sometimes I'm onto something and I smash it out in a couple of years. That's just kind of the way things go. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this brief encounter. Please do remember there won't be anything next week from me, at least. I will inform the team, and maybe on the cafe locked outside of things, there'll be some people to do some stuff. I might even see if I can set up a schedule to rerun something or something to that effect. Yeah. Thursday, though, I will be meeting up with people. So if you're in and around town and you decided to jump on board with Jody Lowe's thing here, if FUCCP, wonderful name, Freedom Unites, Cairns to Canberra Parade. I know you were probably thinking, fuck you, Chinese Communist Party. I certainly thought that straight away. The New South Wales leg, is it? Yeah, that's the New South Wales leg. There you can get all the details. If you would like to you can scan this QR code if you want. If you want more details, please let me know. I can happily pass it on to you. Of course, we did. You can get all the information you need, and I'll throw it in the comments yet again here. From this Facebook page that I'm just throwing a link in here. He's pretty much a Facebook sort of a driven dude. But the Townsville leg of the tour, or Queensland leg of the tour, starts on the 26th of June, Thursday, at Blue Water Park at 5 p.m. I shall be there in some capacity around that time, maybe either before or after. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I've spent a bit of time with the Indigenous, and I'll get there when I get there sort of attitude just rubs off on you. I tell you, it's an easy attitude to obtain. You're just like, no, it's for the Lord of the Rings fans. No, a wizard is never late. He always arrives precisely when he means to. So I'll be there. If you want to join the thing, that's great. Even if you just want to catch up, say good day. What was that? You can do that. I can do the FUTCC Townsville Thungawa. Yeah, I could probably do the same sort of thing. I'm with you. You know, it's about what you can do. You know, it's not, no, I can't. It's not a I can't. It's a I can do this. So let's work on what we can do, ladies and gentlemen. You know, these are just ideas and throwing them out there. I'm not telling you how to live your life or what to do or how to do things. That's your decision to make, and nobody should have any right to tell you otherwise. So we'll just leave it right then and there. Just remember that all I presented today is...
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find...
Why did that not play? Did you hear that?
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
Okay, for some reason, I'm not hearing audio here. I'm hoping you heard it. But anyway, all I ever presented was a certain point of view. That's just what I think. Tell me what you think. Send me an email if you like. Let me know what's going on. Oh, yeah, by the way, Troy, I did hear back from Troy that there were some 3,000 plus signatures going for the vote Townsville Council out, petition for Townsville, remove Townsville City Council. It is still running until the first sitting, in the sense that we can get around with paper copies. And that's actually been one of the most successful methods, because obviously, certain forces don't want certain ideas out there. So if you'd like a paper copy to get around and hand it out at a workplace or to your neighbors around town, or, if you want to actually physically put it in, we've still got another couple of weeks. Let me just check the exact details, because I believe something else came through while I was waiting. So until August 26th and 28th, actually. So that's the next sitting of Parliament. We can still keep gathering signatures. And given that the rate rise has gone through now, ladies and gentlemen, in Townsville and Street, you can probably start these sorts of things up for your own regions if you're also being affected by insane rate rises. Rather than raise the rates, why don't they raise their capacity for doing work? Why don't they raise their ability to manage their money, instead of raising my taxes? Because let's face it, that's just another word for tax. Rates, tax, excises, it's all the same shit. It doesn't matter how they word it, it's the same. Bend you over and take it out of your own pocket while they're giving you a serve without the decency of a reach around. These people suck. Absolutely suck, except they're not sucking you. That would be performing some form of pleasure for us. But anyway, yeah, so August 26th, 28th is the next setting. What's this link? Yeah, that's just the links to the dates of the next sittings. So anyway, you can still get around with the paper copies. Let me know if you need a copy. Of course, you can always email me at nqfreedomnetwork@protonmail.com. There it is, nqfreedomnetwork@protonmail.com, if you want a copy to continuously gather those numbers. So we are up over and substantially over 3,000 votes at this particular point. Of course, in the links down the bottom, you'll also find a free 7-day trial of the Gaia Network. It's an updated one. You get 2 months free on your annual membership if you actually sign up. So, instead of paying for 12 months, annually 12 months, you'll get 14 months for the same price, Plus you get your bonus content bundle, a $50 gift card that you can, use at the marketplace if you want to buy something else, and unlimited access to it all. In amongst all that, there's $10 free Bitcoin when you drop some money into CoinSpot. You drop $10 in, you get free $10. I get free $10 too. So it's helping us. We're helping each other out. Wonderful thing to do. Bitcoin is continuously going up. I mean, things are a little bit unstable, and it's, things are up and down. That's just the way market works. But look, at the end of the day, the longer you sit on the Bitcoin, it is expected to continuously go up. So whatever you can afford to drop in there now is a good investment in my mind, but that's just my opinion, and you can have your own. Of course, $10 free on Stake and a free share on the international market once you drop money into the both accounts. So you can jump into the Australian market and the Wall Street market. Maybe you want to buy some Tesla. Fortunately, I bought it when it was right low and it's jumped up. It's fuck all, but like 2 shares isn't really much to not write home about, but it's a success nonetheless. I can't afford much myself, but what little I can, tuck it away. You know, it might be worth $1,000. You know, when I bought it, like I think it was at $280 or something. You know, it's at about $350 or something to that effect at the moment. Just guessing. I haven't looked at it recently, but you know, it's already made money, so it's sitting there until Albo gets his own realized capital gain. So that's another story. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, these things are all in the links in the description. Hopefully we'll be working a little bit more on the Indigenous documentary soon, especially after our little camping trip. We're going to have a bit of a yarn about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. I know it's a long time coming, but I haven't reached my goal there either. But that's, look, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Don't forget to get over to constitutionwatch.com if you want to get some more information on how to fight back against rates here in Queensland and various other things. It's also another opportunity for you to be able to get the solemn covenant. Close the page. For the solemn covenant that Jackie has put up. It's another way of getting it. Give me a sec. I'll get the words right. I like to read it, so I'll make sure I don't bugger it up. Come on, internet. Move. Faster. It's supposed to be 2025. What the hell is going on? So the Solemn League and Covenant of the People of the Commonwealth of Australia and the call to action available on Constitution Watch and also available on the Telegram page here for the North Queensland Freedom Network. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Time for me to love you and leave you. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I've run out. And look, there's one fierce beer coaster. Actually, I think if you're a member of the Patreons, which is another thing you can do to help us out if you like, come and be a Patreon. There's some of you guys have been there for well over a year. If you can email me a place or PO box or whatever that you would like some fan merch sent to you as appreciation for your long-term devotion, please drop that to me. And next month, once I get through this little financial interchange, I'll call it, I'll mail you guys out some coasters and spoon and a few bits and pieces just to say thanks for your Patreon ship. So, and if you want to jump onto that, the link is also in the description too. So yeah. Love you all, people. Hope you have a great couple of weeks, and I'll see you in a